Hi everyone, my name is Holli Holmes. I'm from Parks Victoria and I'm the Eastern Region Deer Program Coordinator. Annalise has asked me to answer a couple of questions from a Parks perspective about our deer control program. But before I get stuck into that, I'd like to acknowledge our deer program spans across many rich and diverse cultural landscapes and pay my respects to traditional owners across these landscapes and any in attendance today. My role is to lead the Eastern Region Deer team. We oversee a ground and aerial shooting deer control portfolio, and we also guide the region's strategic direction and objectives for deer management. We're a tide funding program and operate over many key landscapes in the east, including the Victorian Alps, the Upper Murray, Snowy River, coastal parks like Cape Conran, Crower-Jingalong, the Gippsland Lakes Network and Wilson's Prom, just to name a few. Parks Victoria has a statewide deer team with a statewide lead and a program coordinator for each region, focusing specifically on deer management. So these positions are funded through the Victorian Deer Control Strategy. Our deer programs are hugely collaborative with all levels of internal teams and a huge range of external stakeholders. How would I describe the deer situation in Eastern Victoria? Well, Victoria has one of the largest populations of deer in Australia. We have 7 species of deer here: sambar, fallow, red, hog, russet, chital and sika deer. So the first 4 I listed there are what we're dealing with predominantly in the East region. Specifically, sambar deer and hog deer are probably a primary concern to us. So under the National Parks Act, we have an obligation to manage introduced species on our estate, which includes deer. But deer are also protected under the Wildlife Act, and sambar, fallow, red and hog deer are also declared as game under that act. So this is a really challenging situation. It has contributed to ongoing population growth and range expansion, while deer are still not classified as pest animals. But regardless of this, many public land managers still undertake deer control under an authorisation issued under the Wildlife Act. And in many areas, it's now a business as usual form of land management. What is Parks Victoria's approach to managing impacts and how has it evolved over time? So it all began for us in 2015 with the Alpine Deer Control Trial. So this was all about the impacts to alpine peatlands. It was a major investigation into deer activity and behaviour and how effective ground shooting was at reducing deer impacts to peatlands. 2018, we did our first aerial shooting trial. So as we all know now, aerial shooting is a very commonly used tool for targeting large and remote landscapes. It's very safe, it's very effective, it's very humane. So it's used widely across PV estate now. That kind of prepared us for the Bushfire Biodiversity Response and Recovery Program, which of course was managing the impact of the 1920 fires. This was a highly collaborative multi-agency response, and it involved extensive control programs of ground shooting, aerial shooting, impact monitoring, camera monitoring, exclusion fencing, and it's where we really hit our stride in all things deer control. Next step was 2020, the Victorian Deer Control Strategy and regional plans were born. This provided a coordinated approach to managing the impacts of deer across Victoria. Our program's partially funded through the Deer Control Strategy, and it's really increased understanding of the scale of the issue and the impact to environmental, economic and social values of all land tenures. And that brings us to today. So deer are now acknowledged as one of the state's highest threats to biodiversity, with many land managers and private landholders now controlling deer, and Parks Victoria really adapting this strategic control approach based on objectives. So strategic deer control. Our predominant species in the east, which is sambar deer, are not considered eradicable using any currently available tools. Unfortunately, we don't have enough funding or capacity to treat all the areas that we want to. So we have to really think and plan strategically about how we can be most effective with the resources that we have. So our control programs are all based on one or a combination of these objectives that I've listed. So asset-based protection, preventing new incursions, local eradication where it's feasible, or localised population reduction. We also do some monitoring. So we conduct research and monitoring based on scientific design principles to assist with our management effectiveness. And another important part of our approach is integrated management and collaboration. As we know, deer move around, they don't discriminate whose land tenure they visit and impact on, and cross tenure permissions have been really beneficial and allowed us to target animals in adjacent areas where they might be feeding or seeking refuge on non-PV estate. What has been a game changer for your program? New technology, particularly the use of thermal drones, has been a huge efficiency for ground shooting. It's reduced fatigue, it's improved safety. It's been really handy for identifying off targets and even incursions like illegal hunters or illegal fishing in our control areas, so that shooters can identify early, report back to ops controllers, and then safely move along and continue their operations. Real-time desktop assessment tools. We have ground and aerial shooting dashboards that let us view our control data dynamics and details like gender, age, class, vegetation cover, EVCs, species. So we can look at those results in real time and also access any previous control data for comparison against seasonal conditions or timings or catch per unit of effort. Next one is reducing red tape where we can and reviewing our layers of governance or internal processes. You know, lethal control programs have complex governance, but there are lots of areas where we can review and try to reduce our administrative burden or the burden on our teams so that we can actually spend more time on the ground delivering. And lastly, perspectives on social license. So just being really realistic about some of the politics with the rec hunting sentiments and not getting bogged down in some of these culture wars. Social license is improving over time, but we are always prepared for criticism. We always ensure we have robust comms planning in place to weather any storms that might come our way and ensure that our teams are emotionally resilient to having those conversations. So we value those partnerships with special interest groups, but it's been really helpful to just be realistic that recreational hunting is a different objective to strategic coordinated deer control for management outcomes. What advice do I have for others outside of Victoria seeking to manage deer in parks? So know your objective, know your landscape, and know how the deer are using that landscape. That way you can use the right tool and the right timing for the right location. Our control schedule is based on previous learnings. It uses a combination of ground and aerial control. Some areas it's only appropriate to use one of those methods, or some areas we're using both of those methods in conjunction. Next is monitoring and delivery versus tied funding cycles. So probably anyone in public land management knows what I refer to here. It's the issue of short-term funding models and them impacting those opportunities for us to have really long-term, meaningful monitoring data. Or often it even comes at the cost of getting those funds to run on-ground control programs. So what we've tried to do to overcome some of that is make sure that our monitoring design is giving us learnings that can be applied to more than one program or just applied more broadly in general. So in lieu of that, I would say use your control data assessment tools. So use your ArcGIS dashboards and platforms so you can do that rapid analysis of your own management effectiveness in real time. And last of all, remember, it's not just up to you to control deer. They are a shared responsibility. So work cross tenure, work in partnership, look for those opportunities to collaborate where you might have a common goal with your neighbours. Thanks everyone, that's it from me. Sorry for speaking so quickly. I've had about 20 coffees today. If you have any questions, you're so welcome to contact me. Thanks Annalise, see ya.